Welcome to r/slash Prorevenge, where a child abuser gets what's coming to her. Also, the other day I asked you guys to send me the worst r/slash logo imaginable for a chance to win $100. I announced the winner at the end of this video. Backstory: my mother was a really sucky person. I have 4 other siblings, 1 older sister, 3 way younger, 3 different dads. Before I was born, I'm a male by the way, my older sister was taken away from my mother when she was a few months old because she tried to stab and slice the father of my sister while he was holding her. She lost custody and the dude left her. Older sister goes to live with her father's family in a different city. Cute little old me coming into this sexy world. My dad went to jail 2 to 3 years after I was born for a while. I rarely saw him. He's an alcoholic if that matters. She was a single mother, but she made it work and she worked hard. One of the bigger problems was that she took out all her aggression and hatred of my father on me, as well as work stress, etc. She dealt with sexual abuse growing up, which I'm sure definitely affected her relationships and how she treated me as well. Anyways, cue me being abused from the age of 4 to 5 to about 17. Every day was torture. She was extremely strict and her perspective was warped. She was also pretty big in stature and had a lot of strength. Examples of her being sucky: I've gotten beaten up badly once because her room was dirty. The dishes weren't washed and I got beaten as soon as I got home, even if there weren't dishes when I left to school. If I walked too loud, I'd get my butt beat. She broke my nose for looking at her the wrong way on my 10th birthday when she bought me a cake I was allergic to. It had peanuts. She knows I'm slightly allergic, but feigned ignorance. It was more or less every day or every other day. She used her fists, elbows, extension cords, hangers, chairs, canes, bats, etc. Whatever she could find, I was getting beaten with. I couldn't ever escape to my room for long because she would always call me every few minutes to get her things or to yell at me. She never drank or did drugs or anything. Whenever she was upset and I happened to be in front of her, she'd kick me down the stairs to make me hurry up. She's put a knife to my neck before and had to be forcibly stopped by her boyfriend of the time. Burned my Christmas presents from other people. She didn't get me anything that year. And just other really sucky things. The only thing I will say, she tried really hard to make up for it with video games and electronics and etc. It didn't make a difference to me though. It never helped. She controlled most aspects of my life. I got by with petty revenges, peeing in the Lipton iced tea she drank, rubbing her forks and spoons between my butt cheeks before I served her dinner, ignoring her screams for help when she had kidney stones. How the freak am I supposed to help anyways? But by the time I got to high school, I turned to alcohol. I resented her, and the negative atmosphere affected who I was as a person. I started to be cold and uncaring, calculated. She started kicking me out every few months, telling me to find somewhere else to live by age 15. She sent me away to a different country for a year and tried to keep my passport, but I made it back to the US with the help of the embassy and my stepfather. She'd already left by that time and found some other dude. I came back senior year with no credits for the prior grade, which ended with me getting a GED. I spent most of the time I could with my best friend and started working sucky jobs. I was terrible at saving as I had accumulated loads of sucky habits while growing up, so it didn't make much difference. She eventually told me that if I went to college, I would always have a place to live until I finished. Cue my first 2 semesters at a 2-year college. I maintained a 3.7-ish GPA. My teachers loved me and it was my escape. Towards the end of my 2nd semester during finals, I came home late one night around 10 p.m. and my mother yanks the door open, screaming in my face, asking when I'll move out. I'm slightly drunk and decide to completely ignore her and walk to my room. If I opened my mouth, that day would be the day I blew up and cursed her out. I've rarely ever raised my voice at her because it never ended well. Now, at this point, I'm 19 and I've been doing school full time with no savings. I am also fairly fit and could easily take my mom at this point. Never laid a hand on her or any woman. I hate violence. I get to my room, she rips my door open and starts yelling. I say nothing and stare at her. She walks away and called the police on me, saying she thought I'd murder her and my younger siblings. I don't know where the freak she got that idea from, as she's the one who's nearly killed me many times. I packed everything into a duffel bag and left 5 minutes afterwards. I failed all of my finals because I couldn't make it to my school. Things kinda spiraled, and the next 2 to 3 years were me on and off homelessness. I survived the best I could in a big city with no college degree and made a lot of sucky choices due to my sucky habits. Eventually, I found a profitable hobby that gave me meaning, and through that I started to work my way up. Got my own apartment, had a full-time job, and did my hobby on the side. I hadn't kept up contact with my mother at all, but my younger sister, who was old enough to have a phone, found me on social media, so I saw photos and such. She didn't have it anywhere near as bad, but she did get beaten occasionally. My mother reached out via email, all smiles, asking how I've been. Now guys, I've always been envious of the relationship most people have with their mom, so I gave her a chance and gave her a call. We talked for a few minutes and everything was civil and seemed like things would go okay, but then she asked me what I've been up to for the past few years, and I told her, honestly, that I was homeless for a while and struggled a lot after what she did to me, but I worked my way out of it. She literally laughs. She laughed for a few seconds in a very condescending kind of chuckle and then said, "I never did a thing to you, so you don't know what abuse is. It's your own dang fault you were homeless. So how about you?" But by that point, I hung up. I was speechless and fuming. I don't know what abuse is? Okay, I've spent too effing long letting you destroy my sanity. Now is the time. There were a few things my mother didn't know. One, I knew for a fact that current well-paying job she had was gotten on lies, as she never got her college degree and lied about it on her resume. Two, I had access to all of her email accounts and cloud storage accounts since I was the one that set them up when I was younger and she never changes her passwords. Lastly, she definitely wasn't aware that from 13 years old and on to the last time she hit me, I took photos of all my bruises, marks, wounds, bloody noses, saving them to my computer and then Google Drive. On top of that, my little sister had been sending me photos via social media of the bruises she got from my mom. The first thing I did was compile all of those photos and videos into one folder. I then reached out to Child Protective Services in my city and explained that my siblings were being abused, how I was abused in the past, and that I had mountains of proof. Since I've called the cops on my mother before and the thing that happened with my older sister, there was immediately a home visit. They arrived almost a day later with the police, and coincidentally, my mother was literally in the process of beating my younger sister when they were knocking. Cue an emergency removal of all my siblings from the house and my mother getting arrested, though she was released hours later. I was getting a day-to-day play-by-play because my mother's best friend is a blabbermouth, and everything my mother said she told her son who relayed it to me without either of their knowledge. I sent CPS all the evidence and there's a legit case against my mother now. The next day, I emailed and then called up her job to inform them that she had lied about having a very necessary college degree as well as current events in her life, which sparked a background check. She was fired days later. Say adios to $75,000 and a blacklist in the only industry you know how to work. I then spitefully deleted every cloud account and email address I ever made for her, which was all of them, which I'm sure will make keeping up with a lot of bills and etc. nearly impossible. I then anonymously reported her to the IRS because of the tax fraud she committed for years by claiming people's children that weren't hers, with a lot of detailed information since I lived with her while she did it. So now, my mother lost all her kids and her job. I'm meeting with a caseworker from CPS next week to talk more about what happens moving forward, but I do know they're not going back. I don't know how she's going to pay her mortgage now and survive. I'm sure she's going to get a call from the IRS who will be looking for a few $1,000s she owes them. She also has to go back to court in a few months. Not exactly sure what she was charged with, but I'll update when I find out how everything turns out. So now that the story's over, I would just like to point out OP's username, /HowAboutThatLipton. About 6 or 7 years ago, I was trying to enlist in the military. I ended up not joining, but that's a story for another time. At this point, I was led to believe I was about 4 months away from leaving for boot camp. I was running out of savings and needing a part-time job for some spending cash while I waited around. So I did what any enterprising 20-something would do and searched Craigslist for jobs. I normally hate sales jobs, especially those based on commissions, but figured it would be a great way to earn some extra cash short term. Found a few job listings that looked promising and put out some applications. A few days later, I received a call from David. He was opening up a new store and needed associates. He liked my resume and asked if I'd be available for an interview on Friday morning. I was very upfront with him and let him know that the distance was a bit more than I'd normally drive for a retail job, and asked what he was offering for an hourly rate to see if it was worth the drive. He told me that they were planning on offering an hourly rate in the mid-teens along with commissions. Seemed like an okay deal, so I agreed to be there Friday at 8 a.m. Friday arrives as a cold, rainy day. I wear a nice shirt and tie and drive in heavy traffic to the address David provided. I knew the area from a previous job and eventually found the strip mall I was looking for. However, I'm not seeing any signage for the company name that was listed. There is, however, one empty space with no signage and 2 people inside. Okay, maybe they haven't gotten the store set up yet, no big deal. I had arrived early, knowing how bad traffic can be in that area. While in my car, I witnessed a young lady in business casual dress remove a sign from the window stating, "Retail space for rent, call 1-800 blah blah blah." Okay, a little weird, but maybe it's the first day in the space. I walk in about 5 minutes early, and immediately my BS meter goes from yellow to the highest level, black watch plaid. The tables are all simple plastic folding tables, the kind college kids would buy for beer pong while on a shopping trip to Target. The walls are plastered with laminated charts featuring tons of dollar signs, smiling faces from stock photos, and an organizational chart showing an all too familiar shape. A pyramid. Dang it. Alright, might as well have fun for a while to wait out traffic going home. The young lady in the dress approaches me, introducing herself as Cindy. She welcomed me to company, name, and asked me to have a seat. She sat at her desk, another plastic table, and pretended to go through paperwork. However, she was really just shuffling papers around. We get to chatting, and I ask her how long she's worked for David. She says she's been his secretary for about 6 months and that I'm going to love it here. Eventually, a guy walks out of the back office, early 30s, clean cut, wearing an ill-fitting suit from JCPenney's. As he is walking over, all smiles, Cindy says, "Oh, Dennis, our newest recruit is here." The guy stops in his tracks and gives her a cold stare. "It's David, Cindy. We've been over this." He turns back to me and gives me his brightest, hard to find good help these days smile. David sits me down and welcomes me, saying they're going to start with the group interview and has me sit down in a circle of chairs. Eventually, more people come in and sit down. David gets up and begins to thank us all for coming. He tells us about an exciting new opportunity from Cutco. He pulls out a set of knives and explains how with his company we can make as much money as we want, all while setting our own hours. He even pulls out a textbook, saying about how his company's revolutionary tactics have been featured in college textbooks. He opened to a page, his hand covering parts of it, making sure we can all clearly see the words Cutco in large letters on the page. Sad to say, a lot of the other interviewees were very impressed by this. One pregnant girl seemed very excited that she could work around her pregnancy and upcoming birth. David was going on and on about how much money he's made and how hard workers will rise to the top quickly. At this point, David said he needed to take a quick phone call and gave us 5 minutes to have some coffee, chit-chat, whatever. As he stepped away, he left his college textbook behind. Whoops. So I pick it up, find the earmarked page, and read. As I thought, it was all about pyramid schemes, and it had Cutco as one of the largest examples. It goes on to talk about how these are essentially scams, not economically viable, etc., etc. So I decide to share this all with the group. I explain how pyramid schemes work and how he's just scamming us. They seemed incredulous. So I said when David gets back to ask them about what we need to pay to get started. That finally got everyone to realize what was going on. David walks in a few minutes later and one of the girls in the group asked David what we need to get started. "Well, all you need is your first set of knives to demonstrate. You can sell that on directly or have them order one and keep that as your demo kit. Doesn't matter, just have to pay the startup fees for it." And that's when all heck broke loose. One kid started to get up and tell him to go F himself, saying he's wasting our time and he's a butthole for trying to pull this stuff. The pregnant girl is crying because she thought she found a place that would allow her to work despite being pregnant. David is clearly confused and flustered and asking who told them all this. When it became apparent that I'm the wrench in the machine, David gets upset and starts telling me to leave. People are yelling at David, David is yelling at me, Cindy is trying to tell everyone she never met David before today and didn't know what this BS was. Eventually, we all walk out, leaving David behind. As I'm walking to the door, I see leaning against the wall the sign that was in the window before. Retail space for rent. Call 1-800 blah blah blah. As I get into my car, I dial the number. Eventually, I get through to a person and ask about the property for rent at the location of David's company. The nice lady on the phone apologized, saying they had just leased out that property. I asked if she knew how long the lease was for, as I was really interested in the property. She said she wasn't sure, they hadn't done the official paperwork yet. They were on their way to the space to sign everything with the leaseholder in a few hours. I told her everything that had happened to me and about David using the space for a pyramid scheme. She got extremely upset, saying that this stuff happens all the time in the industry. They will go to sign, and last minute the leaseholder will decide to opt out after using it for some fly-by-night operation. She thanked me for the info, and I thought that was the end of that. Or so I thought. A few weeks later, I received an email from David telling me how I ruined his life. About how the property management found out what was going on and weren't refunding his down payment on the space, saying he violated a clause in the paperwork he signed to hold the property. How he knew I was the one who called because I'm a terrible human being, etc, etc. Now he was out thousands for the space and supplies. How he only wanted to give us jobs and help us. It was a long, very angry email with several things said about me and my mother. So I called 1-800 blah 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 again, spoke with the same lady I did before, and she was very interested in an email from David where he essentially admitted to what he was trying to do. Said it would help them in all the legal proceedings. And don't you know, I was more than happy to send that email along to her. Her lawyer said it should be an open and shut case at that point. I like to think I'm a helper. Hey, jerkface who ruined my illegal activity twice in a row. Here's a long, angry email detailing all the crimes I've committed. I'm sure this won't backfire in the slightest. Speaking of emails backfiring, in an earlier video, I asked people to submit the worst rSlash logo imaginable for a chance to win $100. I thought to myself, haha, what a fun little thing to do. What could possibly go wrong? Oh no. So after going through every single entry, I've selected a winner, so the contest is over. You guys can stop emailing me now. Seriously, please, I'm begging you, please stop emailing me. So I got some really fantastic entries, and I want to thank everyone who submitted. So I'm going to go through my favorites, and then at the end, I'm going to show you guys the best of the worst. Starting off with this masterpiece, couldn't even be bothered to get a new piece of paper to correct that typo. Just X'd it out, ripped the paper in half, and kept going. Next we have this abomination, which might actually be the ugliest logo anyone sent me. The only competition for ugliest logo comes from this modern work of art. This guy changed my name to Butt Rash. This does an excellent job of capturing the quality of my content. Here we have the laziest entry so far. This looks so bad. This looks like one of the terrible backgrounds that you'd see on like a live journal page from like the 90s. This is hideous. I'm not really sure what's going on with this one. I think this guy spray painted a piece of pita bread, then put it on a bunch of garbage and took a photo. Fun fact, the guy who submitted this demanded that I reimburse him for the cost of the pita. Gonna be honest with you, this one kinda hit close to home. And the grand prize winner goes to this post, where someone wrote r/Reddit, but some guy reads it to you. Subscribe on the bottom of some person's foot. My favorite thing about this submission is that the person couldn't even be bothered to wash their feet before submitting it. So congrats for winning. I will send you $100 for this absolute masterpiece. That was rSlash/Prorevenge, and despite the fact that it took me literally hours to go through all those submissions, it was kind of fun. So if you guys have any suggestions, let me hear from you down in the comments.